The snow was falling outside my apartment window in soft, deliberate flakes, the kind that usually made me feel like I was living inside a snow globe. But tonight, I couldn't feel the magic. Tonight, all I could feel was the cold silence of my phone screen, staring back at me with a message that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Eleanor Grace Whitmore. I'm 34 years old, and I've spent the last decade building a life that looks perfect from the outside. A cozy apartment in downtown Chicago, a career as a graphic designer that I genuinely love, and a carefully constructed wall around my heart that I thought was finally starting to crumble. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. It was December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, and I was wrapped in my favorite cream-colored blanket, sipping peppermint tea that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. My cat, Oliver, was curled up on my lap, purring with that oblivious contentment that only animals seem to possess. I was scrolling through Instagram, watching the world celebrate, when my thumb froze over a photo that made my blood run cold. My entire family. My mother, Patricia. My father, Robert. My older brother, Michael, his wife, Jessica, and their 2 perfect children. All gathered around a table that I recognized instantly, the mahogany dining table that had been in our family for 4 generations. The table where I'd learned to set silverware correctly. The table where my grandmother had told me stories about her youth. The table where I'd sat alone, countless times, feeling like I was always just a little bit too much, or maybe not quite enough. They were all smiling. Laughing. Holding up glasses of what looked like my father's expensive red wine. The Christmas tree behind them was decorated with the same ornaments we'd been using since I was 5 years old. My mother was wearing her favorite pearl earrings, the ones she only brought out for special occasions. I was not in that photo. I scrolled down, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Another photo. My brother and his wife, posing in front of the fireplace. Another. My parents, cutting what looked like a honey-glazed ham. Another. My niece, Lily, opening a present, the very doll I'd ordered for her online 3 weeks ago and had personally wrapped in pink paper with gold bows. The caption read, "Christmas came early this year. So blessed to have our whole family together. Red heart. Our whole family. Except me." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not a clean break, but the kind of fracture that sends splinters deep into your soul, the kind that takes years to heal, if it ever truly does. My hands were trembling as I set my phone down on the coffee table. Oliver stirred, sensing my distress, and meowed softly. "They forgot me," I whispered to no one. "They actually forgot me." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true. They hadn't forgotten me. They had deliberately, intentionally, excluded me. And I had no idea why. I picked up my phone again and did something I knew I would regret. I called my mother. It rang 4 times. 4 agonizing rings that stretched into an eternity. Each ring felt like a nail being driven into the coffin of my relationship with my family. I was about to hang up when she answered, her voice cheery and distracted. "Eleanor, darling, can I call you back? We're right in the middle of..." "Don't," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "Don't pretend you're busy, Mother. I saw the photos. I saw all of them." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the muffled sounds of laughter in the background, my father's deep chuckle, my nephew's high-pitched giggle. It was the soundtrack of a life I was no longer part of. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother said, and I could hear the shift in her voice, the way she was carefully crafting her words. "We didn't think you'd want to come. You've been so distant lately, and with your work schedule, we assumed." "You assumed wrong," I cut her off, and I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "You assumed I wouldn't want to spend Christmas with my family?" "My family, Mother? The one who raised me? The one who..." My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. I've been calling you every Sunday for the past 6 months. Every single Sunday. I've been sending gifts, checking in, trying to be part of this family. And you couldn't even bother to invite me to Christmas? It wasn't like that, my mother said quickly, but I could hear the defensiveness creeping in. There were circumstances. Financial discussions. We didn't want to burden you with. Burden me? I laughed, but it was a hollow, broken sound. You didn't want to burden me, so you just decided to celebrate without me? To pretend I don't exist? To post photos on social media like I'm some kind of ghost you've successfully exorcised? Eleanor, you're being dramatic. That was the moment something inside me shifted. That was the moment I realized my mother had never truly seen me. Not the real me. Not the me that had spent years trying to earn her approval, to be the perfect daughter, to fit into the mold she'd created before I was even born. She saw me as an inconvenience. A problem to be managed. A daughter to be tolerated. And something else, something far more significant, was about to surface. Why does this have anything to do with financial discussions? I asked, my voice suddenly cold. What financial discussions, Mother? What are you planning that I don't know about? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sounds of a door closing, and then the background noise faded. My mother must have walked into another room. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Serious. Guarded. Your father and I have been discussing the future, she said slowly. Retirement. We're getting older, Eleanor. We need to think about what comes next. And the house is a lot to manage. It's too big for us now. I felt the floor drop out beneath me. The house? You're talking about selling the house? The house that's been in our family for 3 generations? The house where we all grew up? The house where? Eleanor, please, she interrupted, and I could hear the exasperation in her voice. You don't understand the financial realities. Taxes alone are. I don't understand? I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I'm the one who took out a second mortgage to help you when Dad lost his job 10 years ago. I'm the one who gave you everything I had to keep that house. I'm the one who put my own future on hold to make sure our family didn't lose the only home we've ever known. The words hung in the air between us. I had never said this out loud. I had never thrown my sacrifice in my mother's face, even though I had been carrying the weight of it for a decade. But now, standing on the edge of this massive betrayal, I couldn't hold it back anymore. My mother sighed, and I could practically hear her rolling her eyes. And we've always been grateful for that, darling. We've always appreciated everything you've done. But times have changed. The market is good right now. We have an offer from a developer who wants to. Who wants to what? I pressed, feeling a cold dread creeping into my chest. Who's buying the house? What developer? And why wasn't I told about any of this? Because you're not part of this conversation, my mother said, and there was a finality in her voice that made my blood run cold. You're not part of this decision. Your father and I have made our choice, and it's what's best for us. For our future. I felt the room spinning around me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could see was the photo on my phone, my family's smiling faces, the tree, the ornaments, the happy, perfect lie they'd created without me. And what about me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What about my future? What about everything I sacrificed for that house? What about all the years I worked overtime, put my dreams on hold, went without things I needed so that you could keep a roof over your heads? Eleanor, that was your choice. We didn't ask you to. You didn't ask me? I laughed, but it was a broken sound. You didn't ask me? I was 24 years old, just starting my career, and you came to me in tears, begging me for help. You said we were a family, and family takes care of each other. You said we would figure it out together. You promised me, Mother. You promised me that house would always be our home. That it would always be mine too. The tears were falling now. I couldn't stop them. I had held them back for years, pushing down the resentment, the hurt, the quiet feeling that my family had never truly valued my contribution. But now it was all pouring out, and I couldn't put it back. Where did you think I was going to live? I continued, my voice shaking. Where did you think I would go when I needed a place to stay? When I needed to feel connected to something bigger than myself? That house was my anchor. It was my connection to Grandma, to the memories, to everything that made me who I am. And you're just selling it like it means nothing. My mother was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold. Clinical. We've already signed the paperwork. The sale closes in January. There's nothing you can do to change this, Eleanor. I'm sorry you feel this way, but we've made our decision. It's time to move on. And then she hung up. I stared at my phone, the screen going dark, and I felt like I had been punched in the gut. For a moment, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was sit there, frozen, as the weight of everything crashed down on me. The rejection. The betrayal. The years of being overlooked, undervalued, and taken for granted. The way my family had systematically erased me from their lives, one small exclusion at a time, until I didn't even get a seat at the Christmas table. But as I sat there, something else started to surface. Something I had buried deep inside, something I had never told anyone. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even my closest friends. When I had taken out that second mortgage 10 years ago, I hadn't just signed a loan. I hadn't just written a check. I had insisted on something. Something my parents had agreed to reluctantly, but they had agreed. I had demanded my name be added to the deed. I had been 24, naive, and desperate to protect my investment. I had watched too many horror stories on the news about families losing everything. I had seen what happened to people who gave without protecting themselves. And so, in that moment of fear and hope, I had asked my parents to put my name on the house. To make it official. To protect what I was giving them. They had hesitated. They had argued. They had said it wasn't necessary, that we were family, that they would never do anything to hurt me. But I had held my ground. I had refused to hand over the money unless they signed the papers. And eventually, they had done it. I hadn't thought much about it over the years. It was just a piece of paper, a formality, something I had filed away and forgotten. I had never imagined it would matter. I had never imagined my family would try to sell the house out from under me. But now, sitting in my apartment, with the cold December snow falling outside and my mother's cruel words echoing in my ears, I realized something that made my heart race with a mixture of shock and something else. Something that felt dangerously like hope. I had a legal right to that house. I was a co-owner. And if my family thought they could cut me out, exclude me from Christmas, and sell my inheritance without my permission, they were very, very wrong. I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Righteous anger. A burning determination that my family, my deceitful, cruel, manipulative family, was not going to get away with this. I grabbed my laptop and opened the folder where I kept all my important documents. After a few minutes of frantic searching, I found it. The deed. The one my parents had signed with me all those years ago. There, in black and white, were 3 names. Robert Whitmore. Patricia Whitmore. And Eleanor Grace Whitmore. A wild, disbelieving laugh escaped my lips. I had forgotten. I had buried it so deep in my memory that I had almost convinced myself it didn't matter. But it did matter. It mattered more than anything. My family had tried to erase me from Christmas. They had tried to erase me from their lives. But they couldn't erase me from that house. They couldn't erase my name from the deed. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. The conversation that followed was brief, professional, and absolutely life-changing. My lawyer confirmed what I had begun to suspect. As a co-owner of the property, I had the legal right to block the sale. I could stop it entirely. The developers couldn't move forward without my signature. My parents couldn't sell without my permission. I hung up the phone, and for the first time in what felt like years, I allowed myself to smile. A slow, dangerous smile that didn't reach my eyes. Because I wasn't just going to stop the sale. I was going to do so much more than that. I thought about the next day. Christmas Eve. My family would be gathering again for their big celebration. The tree. The presents. The perfectly curated photos of their perfect little world. They would be sitting there, smug and satisfied, thinking they had gotten away with it. But they had no idea what was about to hit them. I looked down at my phone, my finger hovering over the group text. My family was going to get a Christmas gift they would never forget. A lesson in betrayal. A reality check about what it means to push someone too far. But I wasn't going to tell them tonight. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to walk into that beautiful, familiar house on Christmas Eve and watch the panic spread across their eyes as they realized their carefully laid plans were about to crumble. I stood up, walked to my closet, and pulled out the dress I had been saving for a special occasion. Deep red. Elegant. The kind of dress that made people stop and stare. I was going to show up at that party tomorrow night. And I was going to change everything. If this story resonates with you, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this story, like and subscribe because it truly helps. What happened at that Christmas Eve dinner changed my life forever, in ways I never could have imagined. Because when I showed up at that house, I discovered something that would rewire everything I thought I knew about my family, my history, and the secrets they had been keeping from me for 3 decades. Because the house I thought I was protecting? It had secrets of its own. And those secrets were about to turn my world completely upside down. The drive from Chicago to my parents' house in the suburbs usually took 45 minutes. Tonight, it felt like an eternity. Every red light was a deliberate taunt. Every slow driver in front of me was an obstacle placed by the universe to test my resolve. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles had turned white, and I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs like a caged animal desperate to escape. The dress I had chosen was perfect. Deep crimson, form-fitting, with a neckline that was just daring enough to make a statement without crossing into inappropriate territory. I had curled my hair in soft waves that cascaded over my shoulders, applied my makeup with careful precision, and slipped on the diamond earrings my grandmother had left me in her will. I wanted to look powerful. I wanted to look untouchable. I wanted my family to see me and realize, in that single moment, that they had made a catastrophic miscalculation. But beneath the carefully constructed armor, I was terrified. What if they didn't care? What if I showed up, laid out my evidence, and they simply shrugged and told me to do my worst? What if they had already found a legal loophole? What if my name on the deed meant nothing because they had found some way around it? My lawyer had assured me I had the upper hand. But lawyers say a lot of things. They give you hope because hope keeps you paying their bills. I had learned that lesson the hard way, through years of watching my parents manipulate situations to their advantage. I pulled into the long, winding driveway of the house I had grown up in, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. It looked exactly as I remembered it. The sprawling colonial-style home with its white columns and black shutters. The sprawling front lawn that my father had spent every Saturday maintaining with religious devotion. The wraparound porch where I had spent countless summer evenings reading books and dreaming of a future that felt impossibly far away. The large bay window in the living room, where I could see the warm glow of Christmas lights and the shadowy figures of my family moving about inside. It was beautiful. It was familiar. And it was about to become a battlefield. I sat in my car for a long moment, watching the snow fall gently onto the windshield. The flakes were bigger now, softer, almost peaceful. It was the kind of snow that made you want to curl up by a fire with a cup of hot cocoa and forget about the world. But I couldn't forget. Not tonight. I grabbed my clutch purse, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. The cold air hit me like a slap, and I pulled my coat tighter around my shoulders. My heels crunched against the freshly shoveled walkway as I made my way to the front door. Each step felt heavier than the last, like I was walking through quicksand. I raised my hand to knock, but before my knuckles could make contact, the door swung open. My brother, Michael, stood in the doorway, his face frozen in an expression of complete and utter shock. He was holding a glass of eggnog, wearing a ridiculous Christmas sweater with reindeer on it, and looking at me like I was a ghost come back to haunt him. "Eleanor?" His voice cracked. "What are you?" "I mean, we didn't expect, how did you?" "I got the invitation," I said smoothly, pushing past him into the foyer. "Didn't you get my RSVP?" Michael stammered something incoherent, but I was already walking into the living room, and the scene that unfolded before me was exactly what I had expected. My mother was arranging appetizers on a silver platter. My father was by the fireplace, nursing a glass of whiskey. My sister-in-law, Jessica, was helping my niece and nephew with their presents. The Christmas tree glittered in the corner, covered in the same ornaments I had helped hang as a child. And every single one of them stopped what they were doing to stare at me. The silence was deafening. It was the kind of silence that happens when someone walks into a room and everyone realizes, at the exact same moment, that something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. "Eleanor," my mother said, and her voice was ice. "What are you doing here?" I smiled. It was a cold smile, the kind I had practiced in the mirror for hours. "I came to spend Christmas with my family, Mother." "Isn't that what families do? Isn't that what we've always done?" My father cleared his throat. "We didn't think you wanted to come. You seemed so busy." "Busy?" I laughed. "Is that what you're calling it now?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just didn't want me here. It looks like you made a deliberate choice to exclude me from a celebration that I have been part of every single year of my life." "Eleanor, please," my mother said, and I could see the panic flickering behind her eyes. "This isn't the time or place for this. We have guests coming." "We have." "I don't care about your guests," I said, my voice rising. "I don't care about your carefully curated Christmas party. I don't care about the photos you're going to post on Instagram to pretend that everything is perfect. Because nothing is perfect. Nothing has been perfect since the moment you decided to cut me out of your lives like I was nothing." Michael stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You need to calm down, Eleanor. You're making a scene." "Making a scene?" I turned to face him, and I could feel the years of resentment boiling up inside me. "You're one to talk about making scenes, Michael. You're the one who's been whispering in Mom and Dad's ear for years, trying to convince them I was the problem. You're the one who's been positioning yourself to inherit everything while I get nothing." "That's not true," Jessica interjected, but her voice was weak. "Michael would never." "Michael would never what?" I cut her off. "Michael would never let his sister be excluded from Christmas? Michael would never try to sell the family home out from under her?" "Because that's exactly what's happening, Jessica. And you know it. You all know it." My mother set down the platter of appetizers with a loud clatter. "Eleanor, I think you should leave. This is not the time or place for this conversation." "Oh, I'm not leaving," I said, and my voice was deadly calm. "I'm not going anywhere. In fact, I'm going to sit down, pour myself a glass of that expensive wine you're hiding in the kitchen, and enjoy Christmas with my family. The family that forgot me. The family that tried to erase me. The family that has been lying to me for a decade. I walked past them, into the living room, and sat down on the sofa that I had practically grown up on. It felt strange to be there, surrounded by all these familiar objects, these memories, these ghosts of the person I used to be. My family stood frozen, watching me like I was a bomb about to detonate. And I was. "Let's talk about the house," I said, folding my hands in my lap. "Let's talk about the house that you're trying to sell. The house that you've already signed paperwork on. The house that you conveniently forgot to mention to me." My father's face went pale. "How do you know about that?" "I know because I'm not stupid," I said. "I know because I've been paying attention. I know because I have a lawyer, and my lawyer has been doing some very interesting research." My mother stepped forward, her hands trembling. "Eleanor, you don't understand. The sale is already in motion. We've accepted an offer. The developers are ready to close in January. There's nothing you can do to stop it." "Actually," I said, reaching into my clutch purse, "there is. Because there's something you forgot. Something very important. Something that changes everything." I pulled out a folded piece of paper and held it up for all of them to see. "Do you know what this is?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and triumph. "This is the deed to this house. This is the deed that I insisted we sign 10 years ago when I gave you everything I had to save this place. This is the deed that has my name on it. My name, right next to yours, Mother. Right next to yours, Father. This is legal proof that I own a third of this house." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. "That's impossible," my father finally said, but his voice was weak. "That's not, you weren't." "I wasn't what?" I demanded. "I wasn't smart enough to protect myself? I wasn't savvy enough to demand what was rightfully mine? I was 24 years old, and even then, I knew better than to trust you completely. I knew that family doesn't always keep their promises. And thank God I did. Thank God I had the foresight to get this in writing." My mother swayed on her feet, and Jessica rushed to steady her. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine," my mother said, but her voice was hollow. I'm just trying to understand how this happened." "It happened because I refused to be a fool," I said. "It happened because I loved this house, and I loved this family, and I wanted to protect what mattered to me. And now, here we are. You tried to sell my home out from under me, and you didn't even bother to check whose name was on the deed." Michael's face had gone from red to white. "What does this mean? Legally, what does this mean?" "It means," I said, savoring every word, "that I can block the sale. It means that the developers can't buy the house without my signature. It means that every single one of your plans is about to fall apart." I watched the realization dawn on their faces, one by one. My father's shock. My mother's fury. Michael's helpless anger. It was like watching dominoes fall, and I couldn't help the surge of satisfaction that washed over me. "But that's not all," I continued, and I could feel the power building inside me. "Because I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about what I want. And I've decided that I'm not just going to block the sale. I'm going to do something much more interesting." "What do you mean?" my father asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I mean that I'm going to buy you out," I said. "I'm going to offer to purchase your shares of the house. And if you refuse, I'm going to force a partition sale. Do you know what that means? It means the court will sell the house at auction, and the proceeds will be divided among the owners. And because the developers already have an offer on the table, I know exactly how much this house is worth." My mother's face crumpled. "You can't do this, Eleanor. You can't. This is our home. This is where we raised you. This is where This is where you taught me that family doesn't always mean something, I said, and I felt tears pricking at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This is where I learned that love can be conditional. This is where I learned that I would always be the one who gave more than I received. And I'm done, Mother. I'm done giving. I'm done being taken advantage of. I'm done pretending that everything is fine when it's clearly not. I stood up from the sofa, and for a moment, I felt like I was floating. Like I was outside my body, watching myself deliver the most important speech of my life. I'm going to give you tonight to think about my offer, I said. Tomorrow, my lawyer will be contacting yours. You can either accept my buyout, or we can go to court. But either way, I'm done being invisible. I'm done being forgotten. I'm done being the daughter who doesn't matter. I walked toward the door, and I could feel their eyes on me, burning with a mixture of anger and fear. I paused with my hand on the doorknob and turned back to face them one last time. Merry Christmas, I said. I hope you enjoy the rest of your party. And then I walked out into the cold December night, leaving behind everything I had ever known, and stepping into something I never imagined possible. But as I drove away, something strange happened. Something I hadn't anticipated. The adrenaline started to fade, and in its place, a wave of grief washed over me. I had just burned bridges I thought would last a lifetime. I had just declared war on my own family. And while I knew, in my heart, that I was right, it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. I pulled over at a rest stop and sat in my car, watching the snow fall, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry. I cried for the family I thought I had. I cried for the little girl who had believed in fairy tales and happy endings. I cried for the years I had spent trying to earn love that was never truly offered. And I cried for the future I didn't know how to build. But somewhere, deep in the darkness of that rest stop, something else began to emerge. Something I had buried for so long that I had almost forgotten it existed. A secret. A truth. A revelation that would change everything. Because the house I thought I was fighting for? It wasn't just a house. It was a vault. And inside that vault were secrets that my family had been keeping for decades. Secrets about my grandmother. Secrets about the will she had left behind. Secrets about a trust fund that had been set up in my name before I was even born. Secrets that my family had been hiding from me my entire life. I didn't know it then, but the battle I had just begun was only the first chapter of a much larger story. Because the house wasn't just a house. It was the key to everything. And my family wasn't just trying to sell it. They were trying to destroy the evidence. If this story resonates with you, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this story, like and subscribe because it truly helps.